Welcome to the Behind the Vision podcast. It has been a little while, so thank you so much for tuning in. In this episode with David, we talk about where his generosity comes from, the experience of raising kids, and life in India. Hope you enjoy the show. David, I was chatting with Steve Weigel before this morning, and I was like, yo, what kind of question would be good to ask David? And he's like, maybe ask him around like why he's so nice and where that comes from. So I would love if you would maybe be able to share a little bit on like where your generosity comes from and why you share that with others.
Sure. Yeah, Steve. He's a good guy. Yeah, I mean, if people who know my parents would probably understand right away. I just think both my parents have this ridiculous love for people. And so, my dad, missionary, and he grew up in India, came to the U.S. For school. That's where I met my mom. And then their whole relationship and marriage and kind of existence has been about helping people. And I grew up with that as a part of that family, and just like seeing my dad's heart for the people in India has, I think, just kind of shaped me into who I am. And I would say that's probably the main reason. I do feel like I have a genuine love for people, and even like a gift to want to see people really like reach their full potential. Mm-hmm. And so and I just feel like I get so much joy from like helping people, and a lot of that is just kind of like day to day, being a nice person.
Yeah,
I guess.
You have a kid too?
Yeah, two.
Right? Yeah, so I suppose that gives you like a good perspective on like raising a young kid and experiencing life that way, and being able to show love to other people too, because you have to actually like care for that person.
Yeah, sure. Like I'm still trying to get the hang of it. I mean, my daughter is going to be turning 4 this month. And my son is, I think he's 8 months now. And so, and that does really change you in a lot of ways. It's a completely new season for you when that happens in your life. And so, yeah, 100%, that definitely has had a shift and change in my life, and really just kind of valuing the human life more, for sure.
Yeah. Like, how would you say that's maybe changed or impacted your life, just like through having kids? Like maybe who you were before and then maybe who you are now, comparing the two.
Yeah. Oh man, there are a lot of things that change. I would say the biggest one is experiencing this kind of like new level of love that I have never experienced before. I'm married, of course, love my wife, and that is, a super special thing. And when you fall in love, you really get to experience new levels of human connection. And then it's almost like, man, how can you love anything anymore than how I do now? And then when you have a kid, it's like this whole new level of like, man, I love this person so much, this little human that I created. And it's like the smallest, tiniest little thing that they do, like no one else cares. And like, I'll like show a video, like, oh, this is what my daughter said the other day. And they're just like, oh, that's cute. But it's like my absolute favorite thing. And so, yeah, kids teach you just new levels of love and appreciation and just value in human life. And I also I had to make quite a bit of shifts in priorities, I guess, is the word for it. I'm a very social person, extrovert. If people are hanging out, I need to be there. And, when you're a single person, you can do that. It's like, if you want to do something, you gotta do it. There's nothing, that's stopping you. and then that shifts a little bit when you're in a relationship with someone, and then especially when you're married, hey, can I go hang out with these people? And there's a little bit of accountability there, or planning, and then also just when you're in a relationship, things get busier because everyone wants both of you to be a part of activities. And so I'm doing a lot of stuff with her family, her friends. She's doing stuff with my family, my friends. But it's not like the biggest shift. And then when you have kids, it's like everything about the way that you live your life kind of time-wise shifts around. Like someone always has to be watching the kids between either you or your wife or both of you, or you have to find someone to do it. And so thankfully we have both my family and her family are around. And so that's super nice too. But also that has been a big shift in just kind of like really, really prioritizing the way that you spend your time. And like, yeah, and who you give that time and energy to. And so, which is good. It helps refine just like the things that you do in your life. It really makes you take another look at, where you're putting your energy.
Yeah, you have to be way more productive, like with your time, because there's even people in Secret HQ office over in North Loop that have kids, and like they're in and out at specific times. I mean, generally people our age, if we don't have kids, we can stay in there longer, we can work longer, maybe we can be more lenient with our time during the day. But I mean, if you have kids, you have to like be out at like 4 or 5 sometimes, unless you have them go to like a babysitter or something like that, or someone to watch them. So it's just like it's just refining and making you look at your time more carefully, because you have to go home and watch your kids and like take care of them. It's like, it's interesting too, because talking to other people, if we know they have kids, that's almost like a free pass of whatever. It's like, oh, I have kids. Oh, okay.
Totally.
Like you got it. Like
totally.
go,
Totally.
So.
Well, and which is good. I think, people understand that your family is a priority. Not everyone does, but most people understand, like when you have kids, they end up, really being the priority. You're like responsible for like how these kids survive and how they turn out. And so, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, like, I have friends who are like, they just see the nightmares that come out of having kids, and they think to themselves like, oh man, I never want to have kids. And I would say, and it's easier to have that perspective when you don't have kids, because it's easy for us to kind of like vent about how hard things are. But it's like the good parts about having kids and having a family, like 1,000 times outweigh the challenges. And so we just don't talk as much about the good things. It's easier to just kind of complain and be like, oh man, now I got kids, I gotta go home and can't do that. But
that's funny.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you had your first kid?
Layla is about 4. So 4 years ago I was 25.
25. Okay. Were you nervous at all knowing you were going to have a kid?
Yeah.
What was that kind of like, that stage of knowing you're going to have a kid to actually having a kid?
Yeah, nervous is a good word. Excited is a good word. We were married for about 2 years before we had a kid, which I'm super, super thankful for that time. Some people, they get married and they're pregnant right away. And so it's like, not that that's bad or anything. I just know for us, it was super foundational to our relationship to have those few years of marriage, just me and my wife before kids came along. And so it was a good time. We weren't like planning to have kids during that time. But we were like, we were waiting for us to be out of an apartment and into our own place. And so we had been in our own place for a year when we found out we were pregnant. And so, yeah, I mean, we were as ready as you can be, but I just don't think anyone is actually fully ready when a kid happens. It's a lot of figuring it out when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty nice. So I think, it's interesting to hear your perspective, because as myself and other people my age are like listening, they may be approaching that age of like beginning to have kids. So interesting to hear like your experience through that.
Oh yeah. And for those listening, it's the best thing ever. I love my daughter and my son, and it's just so much fun, and they bring so much joy and just new experiences to my life. And yeah, I know it's scary, but and your life changes in a big way, but it's all worth it.
Yeah, I think this generation, I think I'm Gen Z, I think they're pushing more to like have kids later in life, and I feel like that's a lot of younger people, they're trying to have kids later in life because they want to experience a lot more. So it's almost like nerve-wracking to like think about having a girlfriend, having a wife, and then having a kid almost like too early, because there's stuff you want to experience and you know the commitment that a kid would bring.
Totally. Yeah, and I would say that's valid. Like that is something that me and my wife talk about, is like, man, I wish we did more things like before. Like we were very smart with our money, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be smart with your money, but like out of college, we both were working jobs, and we like, you know, we didn't take a whole lot of trips. Like we went to India and Mexico, a couple of things, but there's like stuff that we could have done but didn't, just to be kind of smarter about our finances. And then when kids came along, it's just like, oh man, we're not going to be able to do that stuff for 18 years, you know, until our kids off to school. And so that would be a piece of advice, is like, that's a good thing to do stuff and to understand that your life is going to change when you do have kids. And so
yeah,
don't be stupid or unwise, but like, if there's stuff that you want to do and you know that you want to do, like, get out there and do it.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up 18 years. I think there's a lot of things in life that you'll have to do that will require a commitment of you, whether that be working for X amount of years, going to school for X amount of years, doing things for a consistent period of time. And it's like when you have a kid, you're committed to this kid for 18 years, most of the time.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah. And which does really like, I mean, like kids change so quickly, and every year, you know, like a 3-month-old baby is way different than a 7-month-old kid, way different than a 2-year-old kid, way different than a 16-year-old kid. You know, like they have their seasons that they go through, and that also, you know, frees you up in some ways, but also occupies you in other ways. And so every season is different. But, you know, like Jeremy over at Honest, just in the past year or so, our kids are getting old enough to actually watch each other. And so they're like, they can actually leave the house and do stuff without having to, you know, find someone to watch their kids. And like, so it's not like total 18 years of the same kind of commitment. But yeah.
Nice. That's interesting. You mentioned that, so your dad's from India. Were you born in India or were you born in the States?
I was almost born in India. I think, so I was born here in Minnesota, and then I think I was like 3 months old when we moved to India for the first time. And so my first year and a half of my life was in India.
Oh,
and
so
then,
you moved, your parents were back here in the States, and then you moved back to India?
For a year and a half.
Okay.
I mean, my whole life we've been back and forth between India. I've spent quite a bit of my, like probably 50% of my summers. And so like I was born here, moved to India for a year and a half or so, came back to the United States for a few years, and then moved back to India for another year and a half when I was maybe 5. I remember going to first grade in India, which is super funny.
Whoa,
what's funny about that
cool.
is they English is like the universal language of India. There's like thousands of languages depending on the region you're from, but everyone's second language is English. And so a lot of the kind of elementary school years, they're just learning English, and all I knew was English. And so I'd like go to first grade and I'd be, yeah, this is an apple. And this is an orange. Like, yeah, I remember like flying through my tests, handing it to my teacher and being like, you know, can I go on the playground while everyone else finishes their stuff? And so, which then I ended up, you know, I think half a year of that. And then my parents decided to homeschool since we weren't really learning anything. But
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had some experiences in my life over there, and then probably like every other summer we would go move there for 2-3 months, and then during college I went almost every year, just for like my winter break from school. And so
Dang, that's awesome.
yeah.
So do you still have family over there then that you'll go
Man,
and see, or?
yes. So I mean, my dad was actually stuck in India during COVID. For like a full year, over a year, he was there for 2020. But my dad is back and forth quite a bit. My mom goes every year. Most of my uncles and aunts from India have moved to the U.S., but they are also similar, as my family. They're also back and forth between India and the U.S. And so I think currently all of my family is in the U.S., except for maybe my dad's brother is in India right now. But
Okay. That's interesting. It seems like your family will go back and forth. Mm-hmm. Is that something that's common in that culture, or is it something that you really enjoy about India that you go back there so much?
yeah, so I don't think for either Indian culture or a U.S. culture that's super common. I think it's pretty common for like the ministry world, being that we were a ministry family. And so, there, most of the times we moved to India, the plan was for us to live there permanently and like grow up there. But then for different reasons, different circumstances, we ended up coming back and living most of our lives here in the U.S. But, and yeah, I mean, it's weird for sure. I don't meet a lot of people who have, a similar kind of experience as I have, with my childhood. Super thankful for it. Of course, there were, challenges, like my dad would be gone for months at a time. And sometimes, like many, different seasons of my life where my dad was in India and we were here in the US. And so that was also not always fun. But I also know how thankful, we are to have the experiences of like having this global perspective. Like India is a developing country. It's a whole nother world from the US. Mm-hmm. I don't know there are other countries that are similar, but it's just like there's over 1 billion people in the country, and it's just such a wildly different culture. And so for me to have that experience growing up, I think gave me a lot of great and unique perspective. And of course, super super thankful for the culture and experience that I've had here in the U.S. too. And so, yeah.
Yeah, traveling outside of the U.S. is super beneficial just to like your perspective, like you're saying, because you think in the U.S. like it's just the U.S. almost like you know there's countries overseas and different things like that, but you never actually like understand there's actually people over here that are just like you and me going about their day to day that are like generally a lot of nice people, genuine people. So
the everyday life of a person in India just like looks so different than your everyday life, here in the U.S. And you can say the same about every culture and even subcultures here within the U.S. There's a lot of different cultures and subcultures that are different here, and so people just live different lives than the one that we know.
What was it like growing up in India compared to the U.S.?
Yeah, there were a lot of differences because of the culture, but I also think we were in a unique situation where it was like we weren't fully, used to Indian culture. Like I would say I wasn't Indian by culture. I was very American, westernized by culture. And so our lives looked a little bit differently than just like your normal Indian family. But I would say, the main differences, there's so many, so I'm having a hard time figuring out even where to start, but it was just like,
maybe if you like go through maybe a day in your life of like a certain age that you remember.
I would say, one of my favorite seasons there in India was when I must have been 13 or 14. We had a summer there where my dad got these 2 mopeds. We were there for 3 months, and it was during the summer, so it was like 110 degrees every day. You know, it was like that's like a normal day at 10 a.m. And so we lived right by the ocean. And then like not too far from our house, maybe 15-minute drive, there was this like Olympic pool where people would go and train, but it was like open to the public during the summer. And so almost every day we would either go to the ocean, just me and the brothers. Like they didn't care too much about laws at the time. And so, you know, me and my brother, I was 14 or 15, he was 16 or 17, get on the moped, driving, and then my other two younger brothers, or four of us, I would take one of my younger brothers and he would take the other, and it would just be us four, and we would just head out into the city and do whatever we wanted, with like some rupees in our pocket, and get some food and go to the ocean and swim at this pool. And there was like this road called Beach Road right along the ocean side that was like, it was like a state fair every day. You know, the way that the Minnesota State Fair is here, it was like crowds and crowds of people all alongside the ocean and the beach. And so we'd have a lot of fun going there. And yeah, I mean, it was summer. And so, you know, summer as a kid, it was like, what do? You just wake up and you goof around and
just do stuff.
You eat, and then you know, go to bed and you do the same thing the next day. So yeah. Spent a lot of time at the ocean. I really, really miss it for sure.
When was the last time you were back there?
I went, it's been a while. I went when my daughter was 1. And so, and that was hard for sure to be away for more than 2 weeks. Because when we go, you know, it takes a couple days to get there, just traveling. It's on the exact opposite side of the world. Like we've gone both ways, east or west, to get there. And so it takes a couple days to get there. And it's expensive, and you got to make the trip worth it. And so then we're there for like a week and a half, and then a couple days to get back. It ends up being 2 weeks or more of a trip, and that's like minimum. And so, you know, I had a full-time job at the time and a kid, and so I went for 2 weeks. And when my daughter was 1, and so maybe 3 years ago, which this has been the longest I have gone without going to India, and so I'm due a trip soon, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Did you ever bring the whole family with you?
Yeah, I would love to. When Indians see white people, they get really, really excited. Like they love Americans. And so when we bring a team there, it's almost like we're celebrities. Like we go around and people are like waving, and everywhere we go, people want to take pictures with us. And so it's a bit overwhelming, and can definitely be stressful if you have babies with you. And so we're just trying to make the right decision there. And you know, it can be pretty dangerous sometimes too. You know, especially with beautiful, you know, white looking American kids. And there's a big, unfortunately, like, human trafficking problem there too. And so there's definitely some like kind of things we want to be cautious and think about and intentional about. And so, yeah, we don't know when the right time will be, but we're figuring that out. I'll definitely go back before the whole family goes. But yeah.
What do you go back primarily for now? Is it to hang out? Is it for family reasons, or?
Yeah. So, before growing up, it was just like, you know, our whole family's going, we're moving there for the summer or whatever. When I kind of became more of an adult, I've been going to kind of help. Well, I would go either way, just to kind of be a part of family and see the country. And I love India and the people and my parents' ministry, and so just to kind of be a part of that for sure. But I've actually gone to do photography and video work, kind of documenting the trip whenever we go. So.
Okay. The trip, so are you doing the trip with other people, or is it just by yourself?
Yeah,
Okay.
so every year, other than last year because of COVID, my parents' church would send a trip of, I mean, we've done it all different sizes. A small trip would be maybe 6-7 people. We did a really big trip, which was super fun, with like a group of young adults, maybe 25 people at that time. I don't know if you know the Yam House guys, but like Lawrence and Seth and Mare were on that trip, and man, it was super fun. I'm actually hanging out with Lawrence tomorrow. They're just getting back from their tour. And so, yeah. And my wife was on that trip too. And so that was a really, really fun time.
Nice. So let me think here. Did you ever go to college, or not college, high school in India, or once you came back to
No.
States, you just continue on in
Yeah,
the States?
I think at like 5 or 6 years old, I stopped doing schooling there. And so it was just like, the things that they teach in the US were way different at the time for what they were teaching in India. And so if I did schooling in the US and then tried picking it up where I left off in India, it was just too much of a disconnect. And so my parents just kind of committed to schooling in the US. I mean, it's much better in here anyway.
What kind of kid were you like in school?
Oh man, I got in a lot of trouble.
Oh,
Yeah.
big trouble.
I got in a lot of trouble. I mean, I was always nice and kind of respected my teacher. I loved pranking people, and I had like a lot. I didn't like stick to just one kind of group of friends, which was kind of looking back later. I was like, yeah, man, I had some core, groups of friends, but there's so many different seasons, and I realized this most when we were like planning our kind of wedding guest list. I was like, oh man, there's so many people that I wish I could have here that I like was super good friends with, but none of them really know each other. And so I was kind of all over the place in high school, kind of friend wise, and did sports, but also did like choir and theater and lots of those clubs and stuff.
Just did it all. Tried to
Yeah.
do it all, even with the pranks.
I mean, yeah.
What was what was like your best prank?
Best prank. Oh man, what was my best prank? They were all really stupid. Like they weren't like anything to brag on. It was more like me and my buddy would sit on different sides of the room, and then I'd make some stupid whistling sound with my teeth. And then when people would like kind of start looking around and then look at me, I would like stop. And then my buddy on the other side of the room would start making it. And then I'd be like, what, you guys hear that sound?
Oh my God.
And then when they would look at him, I would start doing it too. And then we would just people would just go crazy a little bit.
Yeah. How long were you able to keep that back and forth going? I feel like that would
Between me and my friend?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. We did it multiple days. So we would do it for maybe a couple minutes one day. We probably had a good 2-3 weeks of like bringing it back every once in a while. And then we eventually got like, it's these guys doing that stupid thing.
Dang.
So I did have a history teacher who was super into The Office. And I loved The Office at the time too. And so on our last day of his class, me and my buddy stole his stapler and then put it in Jell-O. Jim does that to Dwight. And so as kind of like a going away. Yeah, kind of like a going away prank.
That's awesome.
And so that was fun.
Yeah. After high school, did you go to college? Dropped out of college or?
No, I went to UW Stout, the design program there, and almost got kicked out. I was like really, really into
doing the whistling sound again.
Yeah.
What were you? Oh yeah.
No. I partied a lot, kind of my senior year of high school, and then when I went to school, one of the reasons why I picked Stout was because I heard it was this big party school, and that's was a big kind of priority in my life at the time, and so I went to Stout to learn how to design and to party, and like that year actually, they really started cracking down on the drinking problem because I think there was like 9 alcohol related deaths in the 2 years leading up to that time, and so like students were like dying because of it, and so they were really cracking down on the party scene, and you're supposed to get kicked out after your 3rd drinking ticket. I got 3 underage drinking tickets just my freshman year, and so I should have been kicked out. Thankfully, my hall director he really kind of fought for me because he knew that I actually did really care about my work, and he was like, dude, just don't like let this ruin your future. And so like thankfully I had him in my life to kind of fight for me. Like he even went with me to like the dean of students to kind of plead my case to not get kicked out of school. and then wrote a letter to kind of keep me around. And so super thankful for him. He's the reason I didn't get kicked out of school. And then I met my wife sophomore year. And so thank God I didn't get kicked out of school. My life would look a lot different if I did get kicked out of school that year. And so, yeah. And then I finished school, 2014 is when I graduated, the degree in graphic design with emphasis on print. And then
Print.
yeah.
So print would just be the physical aspect? Okay.
Yeah, there were kind of like two different routes I could take. Emphasis on interactive media, which is a lot more digital, web design, app design, digital ads. And then I was just like so much more interested in, we were just talking about the screen printing process. And so like, physical, pamphlets, posters, flyers, merch, billboards, anything. There's a whole another level of experiencing a piece when it becomes physical. Like you can choose the weight of the paper, the coat of the paper. Do you want to be shiny, matte, textured, all of that stuff. And so anytime, people always say, print is dying, everything's digital, and maybe that's the case to some capacity, but there'll always be a physical element to kind of experience that I see. It's like if you get a really heartfelt text from your buddy, that's very nice and great. If you get like a handwritten letter in the mail, that's like, you'll remember that forever,
Even if they say it to you in person.
Yeah.
Similar to the physical art aspect.
Yeah. So I just think there's a lot of potential that print has over digital. I mean, and then digital also over print, for sure. But I'm way more interested in like the physical aspect. I also love the idea of, and I see myself as more of like an artist, not so much like a graphic designer or art director. And so like, I really, really love to create things. I do it through digital means sometimes, but I'm also like printing and ripping and gluing and, one of my favorite classes was ceramics in college. And so I love making pots and cups and just like things with my hands. And so that will never change. It's just like a love of mine. It's kind of work in the physical.
I have another question on the college part, but I wanted to ask you, because you brought up the differences between, digital and physical art. What are your thoughts on the metaverse and like NFT art space?
Yeah, dude, I was just having a big conversation today about this, and I have lots of, I don't know enough about it to, really have strong feelings, I guess. I have similar feelings to that as I do kind of social media as a whole. I think there's some incredible potential and benefits to it. I also am super worried about the effect it's going to have on culture and humanity as a whole. And so, like we were talking today about the potential to buy real estate in this, fake world that it's like, but what is fake, And so, and if it's worth money and you get on it early enough, like it might be stupid, but the money is real, And so there's opportunity. And I don't know enough about the NFT space too. I've had lots of people reach out and ask if I'm, be interested in creating them and selling them. And I have a buddy who also just launched his first NFT collection. I don't know if you know Tiago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I did a little work on the promotion for that. You can go check it out. But yeah, I'm just kind of interested, paying attention from a distance for now, and seeing where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, you could, because you like the mesh, it seems like, between the two of like digital and physical space. I mean, you can almost create like a NFT that if you purchase this digital asset, you could also give them like a physical asset, version of it.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
So that'd be cool, because I mean, the real value of, there's a lot of people that will put out NFTs, but unless you're getting something from that, I mean, you can obviously get maybe the clout from owning it. But I mean, what like Gary Vee does with VFriends, and what can be even possible with, if you were to sell NFTs as like event tickets, like you're getting something from that. Even like NFT horse racing is like really cool. Like you buy it and you can like use it type of
Totally.
thing. Instead of you just like buying it and you're like, oh, I own it.
Yeah.
Doesn't do
Oh, I
anything,
know.
but I own it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder where that's going to go to, because, you know, like when I first started reading about NFT, it was kind of explained to me like, if you're just purchasing art, you know, the way I would go to a physical retail space to purchase art to hang on my wall, and you have, you know, you own that piece of art now, but there's this whole digital space that, like, you know, like memes, like what are the rights around people using photos for memes, or like there's like the whole meme culture, and you know, like there used to be, oh, you can't use images or graphics unless you owned it or had the rights to it. But then that kind of got really blurred and blown up over the past couple of years. People are just like using stuff and printing memes on shirts and selling them and making tons of money off of this image that they didn't really own. And so I think the NFT is almost like a response to or a solution to that, where it's like, who owns this weird thing that was created? You know, who has the rights to it? Because it was a photo that this person didn't have a right to in the first place, created a expression of art, or modified it, or changed it, or added sound to it, and then someone else recreated that in their own way. And so it's like NFTs then allows you to like give ownership to these non-physical works of art, you know, if that's what you want to call them. So.
Yeah, no, that's a good perspective at looking at it. I mean, it's almost like any digital work, whether that be like photo, art, anything that could be sourced back to its owner, should almost be published as NFTs, because then you're like, oh, this person owns it. Like when people, I think that's an artist, like sold his NFT of like all his artwork. It's like, well, all of the artwork prior could have almost been created as NFTs through his account, so that the ownership traces like back to him and he owns all of it, instead of other people like taking his work and then posting it, and gets into like a whole scandal type of thing.
Oh yeah, dude. One of the stories that I read was like this artist became like a multimillionaire overnight and didn't even really realize it, when like someone contacted him and said, hey, like you own the rights to this photo that was used in this, you know, online trend that everyone has seen. And, you know, like when a image goes viral like that, it's like everyone knows the image, but it's like there's no way of anyone getting credit for it unless someone really owns the rights to that video, or that photo or whatever it is. But then like, because the photo was famous and then NFTs were created, it then gave value to how blown up that photo was. And so like he had a rights to a photo, it went viral, but how is he going to make money off of that? He's not. All of a sudden these NFTs come around and someone has like the ability to own that photo that has a value because of how viral it has become. And now it's like rich people can be, you know, it's the same time anyone who spends a ton of money on a work of art, it's like, yeah, it's a beautiful piece of art, but it's also, I feel like a lot of people purchase, you know, those $1 million pieces of art just to say like, oh, I own a Jackson Pollock painting. You know, just, it's more of like it's good to know that you own something that has been kind of important or influential in the art space. So yeah, super interesting stuff, man. I don't know how involved I'll get in the future. I also have friends who are getting like very deep into that and are helping people create collections and stuff. And so I'll be learning about it a little bit more for sure.
Yeah, sweet. Do you think NFTs can almost become like the new social media in the way that it's like decentralized to like the owner? So if you own like a social media account and like for you post a lot of art, wouldn't you rather just post those as, I mean, obviously they cost money to post, so like you have to set up different accounts like OpenSea and stuff. But I mean, wouldn't you rather just post your content as an artist on like NFT world and sell it, so then you'd have ownership? And like just thinking about how social media is curated and all the apps, it's like, why isn't TikTok, Instagram, it can almost be like a decentralized platform? Obviously you'd want not Instagram and preferably not like Meta to own it all, because
Sure.
some centralization going there, but being able to like decentralize it all would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and I totally would if it was that easy. Like I know there are platforms in which you can go and purchase these NFTs, and I mean, I feel like most of the work that I do is like for a client, and so I don't know if it's necessarily something that can I sell someone's logo to someone else NFT wise? I don't think so. I don't even know if I mean, I guess I own the rights to anything I create until I sign an art release form, which I have had to do for a couple of things that I've created, but for the most part, I mean, if I were to start posting with the intent to sell as NFTs, I would be creating art, for the purpose of that. But then, there's rights behind that, one of the things on the top of my Instagram is like this, illustration of this octopus, but it's within like the Adidas logo. And so it's like, I don't know if I'm allowed to sell that, because of it's not my logo,
Yeah.
And so I do think there's a level of like it needing to be an original work. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. I did want to just go back on like the college point, because you obviously had your different challenges and experiences going to college. What would you say is maybe like the biggest takeaway you had going through college?
Yeah, there's been a few big ones. I would say a couple of quick ones would be for those who are in college right now. Like, really be intentional about getting the most out of that experience. Because especially for those in the creative field, like when I got out of college, I was kind of naively thinking, all right, college prepared me for how, the real life is going to be. And like in college, we would spend weeks, if not months, on these projects. And then I get to the real world. I guess it really depends on who you're working for. But for the most part, and most of the designers that I know had a similar experience, you get to the real world and they're like, hey man, can you get this project to me by like in 3 days from now? I'm like, oh, what? Like I was just taught to spend way more time and intention to do the research, to lay it out, to get, feedback, to ask all your classmates and your professor, and like this super deep and intentional and long and drawn out process is something that, I had its deep, deep value in going into the real world. And then the real world was like, give me this design in 3 days. And it's like very different. And so, and I think some people do it differently. It's not always that case, that's not always the case, but, I do really miss the level of intention we got in our college courses. I have had the opportunity to have really great, solid creative process in a lot of my projects, thankfully, but it's not, maybe a couple times a year I would get into this, a similar process as what I did in my college courses. And so I really miss that time. You also have access to like all this cool, crazy equipment. And I'm speaking mostly to art majors, art students. We could just use screen printing equipment, all we wanted. There are tons of cameras you could rent for no money, just sign up and take it and try it. And so when you graduate, you kind of are like, oh man, I can't just go screen print whenever I want. I can't just go throw, a pot whenever I want. I need to sign up or pay or, whatever. And so make the most out of your experience there. I know a lot of people are in a rush to graduate, because the real world is big and exciting, but I would just say you never get an experience like that, outside, like after college, unless you go back to college, but, cherish those times and make the most of it.
Yeah. It really helped you lay the foundation for like the real world, it seems like, when you're thrown into situations like that where they ask you, hey, can we have this within 3 days? I mean, you go back to what you've already learned. I mean, obviously you'd want and maybe prefer more of a methodical like process of creation for what you have to do, but I mean you can maybe accelerate that
Yes.
because of the foundation you've built through going through college,
Yes.
which is super nice.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of how it works, is like college is really getting into the process, spreading it out, understanding the importance, and then like as you do a process, obviously you get better and more efficient and more refined and everything. And so not that, you know, my expectation was to do every project, you know, that deep and long and drawn out, but I also am really understanding that like the design, like not everyone understands the value of that creative process. And so you almost have to contend for it as the artist, which I've had to do a lot of in my career. It's just like so many people, they'll spend a year working on music, you know, for this album. And then they'll reach out to an artist and be like, hey man, can you give me something for tomorrow for the album cover? And it's like, dude, like this is going to be the visual representation of the work that you put into this album. Like you should be, you know, you should have a lot of value in like how that is expressed, you know, because some people are going to see this artwork and decide whether or not they're going to listen. You know, it's like, don't just throw something quick on there. I mean, as of late, there has been a lot of, that's been more of a trend. You know, you look at Kanye's album cover, Nanda, Blacker.
He like recorded it all like super quick too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Don, it's a mix of different lengths of processes for the tracks. You know, like Hurricane, which is the big hit from that. You know, he started writing back in like 2014, like wrote for Rihanna and then recorded it multiple different times, and it was supposed to be on Yandi and then didn't show up because that project got dropped, and then eventually it got released. But yeah, so it's like, but I'm talking specifically about like the artwork, like it's just a black image. And then even CLB was like the pregnant lady emojis like across, like it's almost a trend now to not care about your artwork, album artwork, you know, accurately expressing the music. But I wouldn't recommend that for people who are not Drake and not Kanye. You know, like when you're that big, you can pull anything off and get away with it. But
if you're not, you gotta hire David here to help you knock out some artwork.
Hey, I love to do it. That is one of my favorite things to do. I love branding and kind of coming up with brands and logos for companies, but like and startups. But one of my favorite things to do is to like listen to music, and I can almost like hear colors and visuals that kind of come to mind when I kind of close my eyes and listen, and then to take that experience and try to create it and express it is so fun for me, and so I do really love doing that.
Who would you say is your favorite artist, and you know, within that favorite artist, what would be your favorite album?
Sure. So like musical artist.
Yeah.
Kanye is top of my list. I would say I do have like a top 100, and then you know, obviously changing and shifting every time something new is released. But I am big into the hip hop, R&B space. It's kind of my favorite genres, and so Kanye, Kendrick, Childish Gambino, Frank Ocean are some of my faves. James Blake. But I would say like Kanye, if you know me, you know I am a big Kanye guy, not just for his music, but as like a creative. Like he's had more influence on me as a creative than, you know, probably anyone. Follow up would be Virgil, R.I.P. Virgil. And so and those two guys are from Chicago, and they kind of grew up together and blew up together, and so I just love that group. And then Don C is another friend of theirs who does some design work for Nike and has his own brand, and so like I love paying attention to kind of like the story of these like groups of creatives, and so yeah, musically Kanye, but also in the he does have an edge over other musicians because of his influence in other industries like fashion, architecture, and just like he's just so influential.
Yeah, Virgil passing away, that was sad. Because he's not really old, and you didn't really expect it of him.
Yeah.
And I've just known him just through like his work through the brands who've done like Off-White and Louis Vuitton too, and I've seen interviews he's done on YouTube, and those are really interesting. His just like mindset on the work he does around his creativity and like his vision for different things. And I remember, I think I was either on YouTube or like TikTok, and there was a video where he was talking about why he made Off-White, and he did it to hopefully inspire like a kid to create his own streetwear brand.
Yeah.
Because that's why he made it too expensive. So like a kid would look to Off-White and be like, oh, this is too expensive, I'm just gonna make my own.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like,
Yeah, he says he to inspire the 17-year-old version of himself. It was like a big reason why he started Off-White, or at least got into fashion. And so, yeah, man, it was super unexpected, especially like last week of all weeks, because like he had so much going on because of Art Basel that was going on in Miami. That was where his Louis Vuitton show was happening. He also was involved in like 3 or 4 other things that are happening that week. It was like a huge week for him. And Tiago, he was curating Tiago's work actually for Art Basel. And so Tiago was gonna meet him if he hadn't passed, and maybe other people that I knew. And so it was like crazy exciting time. He was gonna do a lecture called Divine Design with Rich Wilkerson and the VU team there in Miami. They did a whole setup, and they rented out a warehouse and then created the entire warehouse interior into like the stage setup and different art expressions, and it was super cool.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of that.
Yeah, the Divine Design.
I'll follow kind of that group a little bit just through Active and like Zach Windall and Brent Sunday and stuff. So seeing that stuff was really cool. And
Yeah, so it was crazy, man. Like he kept his struggle with cancer pretty private. I didn't know anything about it, and so news was like, oh man, it was pretty shocking actually for me. And he had been such a big impact on me too. Like I have my my Off-White on my keychain. Like this is like I carry it with me everywhere I go. You know, for the past like 5 years since I've had that, and so it's been pretty crazy actually the past like couple of weeks.
Yeah, going back to your favorite artist as Kanye, I mean, would you say you have like a favorite album of his?
Oh man, it's super hard for me to pick one. I go back and forth between The Life of Pablo is probably my most listened to album, but I also just like there is no album like Graduation. Back in the day, and maybe I'm a little bit biased too because that was the album that really got me into Kanye in a big way. But that album is unbelievable. There isn't a single track that I skip when I go through it, and so, I mean, like, I could go through the list and talk about why I love every one of those. And one of the biggest things about Kanye that inspires me is like he doesn't just drop an album; he like creates an entire season of life around these albums. And so it's like, yeah, the music, but if you see like what he did with Jesus is King, it was like he created an entire new concert and tour experience with Sunday service. Like he's no longer in these giant arenas, like he's finding these fields somewhere and then bringing an entire choir, and it's in this dome circular kind of experience, and then the crowd stands around. Like he creates he just kind of reimagines and breaks all barriers of what you would expect a tour to look like, and he does that for most of his shows. Maybe not that out of the box when he goes on tour, but like it's not just the album cover and the music, but it's like the outfits he wears, the design of his stage, even the kind of campaign leading up to the launch of that and through the tour. Like his whole life gets put into this season of art and music and expression, which is always so interesting to watch.
Yeah, The Life of Pablo, that album, and then Father Stretch My Hands?
Yeah, dude.
Dude, that song in the morning, amp you up.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it's one of the best songs ever made, I think.
I'd listen to that song in the morning, just like amp you up and stuff. It was good.
Yeah, with Chance. Can't wait. Can't wait for Chance and Kanye to be working together soon.
Dang. That's cool. What have you kind of been up to currently, just in your life?
Yeah. Well, just this year I started over here at Honest Media. Before that I was at an organization called Pulse. I was there for a long time, even interned during school and then worked part-time as I finished up school. And so it was, going on 8 years of having a season there at Pulse. And so then, just felt like it was time for a new season, joined the Honest Media team, and it's been incredible. I've been working with them for years, just kind of like freelance and just friends with the guys. But yeah, being able to come on full time has been a big shift. At the same time as I started that job was when I had my baby boy, my wife and I. And so, yeah, new season of life that started over the summer. Baby, new job. I also, and this is a super long story. Maybe we don't want to get all the way into it, but I got COVID over a year ago and then am still dealing with symptoms from it. And so I got what's called post-COVID syndrome, AKA long COVID, which a lot of people get, but not everyone got it the way that I did. I was like super, super sick for 4 or 5 months. And then like right when, that was another kind of big shift in my life at the same time. Like we had our baby, I started a new job, and my COVID symptoms started to get better. And so it was like, and then the weather was changing because it was beginning of summer. And so it was just like this huge, it was actually extremely rough season of life for me. Working from home was tough already. It was tough for everybody, that whole kind of COVID season. But then also on top of that, being like super sick, and then having my wife super pregnant during that time. And then I had a 3-year-old at home who was like trapped and can't go outside because it's, cold. My wife can't take her out because she's super pregnant. I can't take her out because I'm super sick. And then we're not really hanging out with a ton of people because my wife was pregnant. We were being pretty safe for COVID reasons. COVID had affected a lot of pregnancies. At least that's what we read and heard at the time. And so we were being pretty safe about COVID stuff. And so it was just like for 7 pretty intense reasons, like it was a tough season. And then like right at that time, like 5 out of the 7 just kind of disappeared. And so, incredible summer, incredible fall, starting this incredible winter, work and family for the most part is what I've been up to, man. And it's been great.
One thing you forgot to mention. Got the new haircut.
Thank you. I did. Chopped it off. Right now, it looks a little really enjoying the short hair with the hat on, just because I'm sure I'll miss the long hair eventually, and I'll probably start growing it out again. It won't be my last time having the long, but dude, it was real long. It was like I grew it out to donate it, and you have to donate a certain length. I think 14 inches minimum. And so, but I didn't know if I wanted to like completely shave my head. So if you want to keep some, you got to grow it out longer than 14. And so I just kept growing it. And when I was reading about it a little bit more, it was like the longer, the better. And so like grow it out as long as you possibly can so that they can have more, to work with. Yeah. And so I grew it out as long as I could. And then last week I was just like, all right, I'm just going to chop this off. I grabbed some scissors and...
Oh, you did it yourself?
Yeah.
Dang, so you just like
Yeah,
Just
well,
went to it?
you put it in ponytails
Yeah.
sections, and then you just chop the sections.
Okay.
And then I trimmed it up myself too.
Yeah.
I was planning to go and get it professionally cleaned up. But my wife said it looked good, and so did the people at work. So I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I will eventually. It's not a huge priority as of
Yeah.
now. But
That's
but I mean,
cool.
I just took the razor to the sides and back, and then evened it out.
Dang, dude, that's cool. I had a few people answer the poll on Instagram.
Yeah. Curious about those.
I know you got kids too, so I want to be mindful of your time.
Oh no, dude.
Um,
No rush.
Had 2 people send more than one question, which is funny. Let's see here. Okay, this is a good one. This one's from Katie Visselman. Did I butcher that?
No, I think that was
name?
right. Yeah.
Okay. One of her questions, she has a few, but I think we kind of covered them briefly. We were chatting. What is your biggest creative regret?
Biggest creative regret. It's a great question. Kind of first thing that comes to mind is, and I would say it's still a little bit of a regret, maybe not something super specific, but waiting to act on ideas. There's just been so many times in my life where I'm like, like years ago, I would have an idea, or even like months before, I'd have an idea. I'm like, oh man, this would be really sweet. I should start doing that. I plan on doing it. I put a little bit of effort into it, write it down, don't have a ton of free time, so I'm not able to get to it. And then it kind of, falls off or doesn't get worked on. And then a year or so later, I see it, someone else doing the same idea, and it's like super good, super successful. I'm like, oh man, I knew that was a good idea. And like, I should have done it, and that's on all different levels, business ideas, or even just kind of creative design decisions. And so, yeah, I would say regret. Yeah. Nothing like super specific comes to mind, but yeah, just like, if you believe in an idea you have, just kind of trust your vision and do what you can to see it through. Yeah.
Nice. And then we have another one from, you may know who this is. Who's your favorite coworker?
That's Ryan. And he's not even a coworker. And I knew.
That's hilarious. That's from Caleb. Nice. And Caleb's
Oh,
like,
it's from Caleb?
and the follow-up, why is it Caleb?
There
Nice.
it is. There it is. Caleb, you're right, man. You knew.
Let's go. Sweet. To finish off the podcast, you kind of did mention something towards like the creative regret, which is good. If you have anything other than that, what would be your biggest piece of advice to your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely, what I just answered about creative regret would have been in that lane for sure, is just kind of like really trusting yourself. I'll give another one. Actually, this one is probably an even bigger piece of advice. I would just say, just never stop learning. I think it doesn't matter how good you get at something, or if you think you are the expert in the room, even people with, not as much experience as you has a unique perspective and has something to offer for sure. And so like, never stop learning. There's something there, there's so much I think we have to learn from the people around us at all different levels of experience. And so never feel like, and that's another, reminded me of like a Kanye quote that I love. He always says, always the student, never the teacher. He tweeted it out a couple years ago, I think. But that just kind of stuck with me in being like, never stop learning and absorbing, and, be really observational and be intentional about learning too. A lot of people, they just kind of like go through life and subconsciously take in stuff, and that's great too, and that'll happen, and a lot of that has to do with shaping us into the artists that we become. It happens kind of in the subconscious, but you can get a lot better a lot faster if you are super intentional about learning what you can through every season. And so ask questions, write things down. I was just telling you about this before we even got started. It's just like when things come to my mind, lessons, through experiences or things that people say, quotes from people that, like from celebrities that I follow to, like a conversation that I had on the street. If someone says something of value, like write it down, because you'll probably forget it. But if you go back through your notes and think about it more, it will take root in a stronger way.
I love that. Just got to learn through the successes and the failures. Yeah. Well, sweet, David. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, man. I appreciate
you
it.
for coming on and chatting with me. So.
Yeah, man. Appreciate the opportunity. Super fun time. And yeah, hopefully someone out there hears this and gets inspired. And
for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go. Thank you for tuning into the podcast with David. If you enjoyed it, please send us a DM on Instagram at BehindTheVisionPod or ever_north, or leave us a review, as we love to receive your feedback on the show. If you want to stay up to date on new podcasts and collection drops from Evernorth, check out evernorthco.com. I have not released a collection in a little while, but planning on something for early next year. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you have an amazing day.